today's guest on the show. This person is um, a longtime crush, definitely part of my intergalactic, interdimensional soul family and my alien bay. and, and just we've been in community for several years and been friends, and it's been a pleasure to see us both evolve and become more of who we are, but for the world to see. And so I'm really grateful to have you here, Evita.
I'm very happy to be here. Crush returned. Okay. We are longtime crushes of each other. Yes.
For people who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in this current chapter of your life?
Sure. So I'm Evita Lavita Loca Sawyers, pronouns she, her. I am Black. I'm queer. I'm a mom. I am a community case manager for an organization that assists folks living with HIV and AIDS by day. Okay. And by night, I am a polyamory and non-monogamy coach, content creator, speaker, educator, and also now published author.
Woo, woo.
So I just recently released the a Polyamory Devotional, 365 Daily Reflections for the Consensually Non-Monogamous with Thornapple Press.
Yeah.
That just came out in October. And I just like talking about the journey of living non-monogamously and kind of helping others with things that I didn't really have help with when I first got on this pathway. And that really does drive, a lot of what I do.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been pretty exciting. I'm waiting on my copy now, actually, of the book. I was like traveling when it was being released and everything, and then I knew I would get it, and then I was hoping it would be here before so I could be like, look, I have my book. But by the time this airs, I'm going to be like, look, I have my book. So, what was that process like? Wait, I think I'm a little bit ahead of myself. No, fuck that. What was the process like of writing this book? And if you can tell us a little bit more about it, it's a devotional, like 365 daily devotional for the ethically non monogamous. What does that mean for you to put that into a devotional? What is the book?
So how it started was really it was like a pandemic experiment. So I would tell people if you scroll way down in my Instagram profile, you'll actually see where it was just a personal Instagram, where I would just post pictures of, my kids and the things that I made and shit like that. And I had already been doing some polyamory education. I'd spoken on podcasts. I was on a show that aired in like the UK. Somebody came and interviewed me. We also have the documentary Poly Love that's on Amazon. So I'd been in that. So I had some notoriety in the community. I'd spoken at a couple of conferences before I became this version. And I would I had already had like a polyamory Facebook page, and occasionally I'd go in and I'd post things. And so I like challenged myself to see if I could come up with a daily polyamory reminder for like 365 days. We're all in the house. We ain't doing shit anyways. And so I think really the pandemic is where it exploded because a lot of everybody's interacting moved to the internet, so and so that's kind of where I began to gain speed, and get followers because I just would start posting this daily reminder every day. And so I'd post a reminder. And then at first I would just post a reminder and that was it. But then I found that it was really hard to, like, I do possess the ability to be able to distill like these really profound topics in these very concise ways. But these things are so nuanced that there's so much more that you can say. And so I started shifting it to where, like, first I would just make the post and that was it. But then I started shifting it to where I would make the post, I'd say the reminder, and then I'd say something underneath it. And so I was like, okay, let me try to get 365 of these and then comprise them in a book. I also like that format because as much as I like to read, sometimes it can be hard for me to finish a book.
Yeah.
And so even more than two, when I read more than two, it took me almost a year to get through that entire book. And so I wanted something that was digestible, something that people could kind of like, for the people that really aren't readers, but still wanted resources, that there would be something that was small, it was digestible, it gives you something to think about. I like the idea of, reading it once at a time. I also like the idea that you could just pick it up and open, say to the universe, hey, I need a message, and just open to a page and then,
The word they call
see what comes out at you. So I like that it's customizable for how people can use it, that you don't have to read it every day. It's something that you can return to. You can mark passages that are poignant for you and that kind of thing. I kind of like that. I like devotionals myself personally, and outside of, because I had a, period of time in my life where I was a Christian, that was really all where you saw those things, devotionals around scriptures. I know that there's another book called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one is kind of the same way, where it's, you read a little snippet of wisdom. I even grew up, with my mom and my aunt, reading those little daily breads, the little daily
Yeah,
bread books and stuff. And so I like the idea of like having a small piece of wisdom that doesn't take a lot of time to consume, but can open up a space for you to think and to, ruminate. And then there's like a little question at the bottom for reflection, for people to kind of find themselves. Because, I didn't want to, my goal in writing the book wasn't to like create this army of people who think and feel like I do. I actually hope, that you read something in the book that you don't agree with, or that you're like, oh, I don't think about it, because that's the point. I'm not trying to give people my answers. I'm trying to have people find out what their answers are for them.
I love it.
Everything I say, you're not going to agree with. Everything I say is not going to work for your relationship. But the point is for you to sit and think about this and come up with your own answers, because when we have our own answers for things, we feel more self assured moving forward, because we know what our yeses are and we know what our nos are.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the thought process that I went into. And then when I went to actually, so I approached Thornapple about it. They were like, yeah, we think it's a good idea. We want to take the book. And so then you go into the process of compiling all the things. I had to go back through all the posts and, find the ones that I wanted to keep and find the ones I want to get rid of. And so even when it came time to actually present the comprised like project to Thornapple, I still had about like 40, 30 or 40 reminders that I actually had to write, because I didn't have a full 365. And then there was also the process of, I had a word count. So I had a word count for the reminders, and I had a word count for the little blurb that was underneath it. So then I had to go into editing and like, how do I say this thing that I said if it was too long? And I'm long winded, I say a lot. I use a lot of words. And so like I had to like cut things down. What did I want to keep? What did I want to, and but and part of it was for me, like I'm a chronic starter and not finisher. And so I was like, Vita, you got to finish this, like you got to get this thing done. And so like, and so I was fortunate enough that I had a period of time where I was able to like sit and like really just focus on the writing and the getting it together. And so I did, and I turned it in, they accepted it, it went into print. And so now, here we are, we have this book. And so, yeah,
I love
it's very
that.
surreal.
Yeah. And I remember those early posts back in the day, like your, I don't know if you were calling them yeah, I think they were the daily reminders, but um, there's this little blurb and then the nuanced, you're trying to like fill in all the gaps that you can't hit on this one little word card. And then there's always people coming as like, oh, you forgot this one fucking thing. Or what about this 1 0% ass situation? And so like I imagine that when it was coming to like trimming the fat, if you will, and editing the book, that it was kind of hard to do, because obviously if you spoke it, then it was that expression, and you want to make sure that your words coming, your message is getting across. So I applaud you for that process.
Yeah, it can be challenging, especially because, I do have a semi large following, and I think people don't really appreciate about content creators. Number one, how challenging it is to say what you want to say in the small character space that you usually have for what it is that you want to say. And also, it is literally just not possible for me to take every situation and cover everything that's connected to it. It's just not possible. And in lesser moments, so I don't want to say lesser, but there are some moments where I get really annoyed, and I get frustrated, and or I get snappy or snippy, when people kind of balk at things. But what I've come to really realize is because we're talking about relationships, which is such an emotionally charged topic, which is such a topic for people that's connected to so much stuff, so much joy, elation, but also hurt, wounding, past trauma. Like it's just, relationships and that arena
Mm-hmm.
is just a very emotionally charged arena. And so what I always say is I'll get somebody that'll say something and I'm like, man, this person is bleeding all over my post. And that really is what it is. Like they are just bleeding all over my post.
Yeah.
And so when I am like in my like higher self and I can remember that, like, I try to like be a little bit more compassionate or be a little bit less, okay. Like, it can sometimes be hard to kind of not take things personal because I know that I'm not trying to be dismissive in what I write or that I'm trying to be kind or, to help people or whatever. And it can sometimes be challenging when someone balks at it or, well, what about this situation? Or you left this out. And I'm like, I'm literally just a human being, and then learning how much entitlement people have to content creators. And you have to say what it is that I want to say. You have to speak to my specific situation, even though I have 45,000 followers. Like, there's literally no way for me to be able to cover every, cross every I and cut, and dot every I and cross every T that, that, like I said, is even remotely connected to this thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And while I do feel like I do a really good job of communicating balance in my work, but people kind of learning to kind of be okay with people taking it where they take it, and then also understanding that people are having their own experiences with what I'm saying, and most of the time it's a stranger on the internet. I don't have any insight into that person's life. I don't have any insight into their relationships. I don't have any insight into their lived experience. So kind of needing to kind of step back and be at peace with going, I said what I said. It landed how it landed. If it resonated for you, wonderful. If it didn't, that's okay too. If this struck you in such a way that you no longer feel like you can consume my content, I understand. I hope you go be blessed, and I hope you go find the voice that will move you to this next version, of that, of you moving on from me.
Yeah.
And kind of learning to kind of, just like I said, just kind of be at peace with it, and and then learning how to really stand firm in the things that I say, which then that comes with an added layer of really having to be very intentional about what it is that I'm saying, and making sure that if I put it out there, that I said that thing with my chest,
Mm-hmm.
and, however it lands when it hits, to kind of make my peace with that. Yeah.
On that. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So, what is what your spirituality? What are your spiritual practices, and do you find that your spirituality impacts your polyamory or your dating life, and if so, in what ways?
So I consider myself a spiritual person. So this is what I tell people my philosophy is. The human condition is dual. We spend our lives as a pendulum, swinging back and forth between polarities. We're always either a little too far to one side or a little too far to the other side. And so we spend our lives swinging back and forth between polarities, trying to arrive at center. And I believe the divine is in the center. I believe the divine is in the center. That's where God is. That's where the divine lives.
Yeah.
And so I consider myself a center path, in that I'm trying to find that center point where the divine is. I don't have any particular, system that I follow. I'm not Christian, I don't really, I'm not any of the big three. I don't believe in God in the sense that he's this like, bearded man up in the sky. I believe that there is a divine source energy. We all come from that divine source energy. I believe that religions are all conduits to get to that divine source energy. And if you choose a particular conduit, then you have to follow the edicts and the rules for that conduit, you know? It's
Mhm.
like it's same like to me, it's like a whole bunch of highways, to one destination. And if the speed limit is 60 on this one, you got to go 60 on that one. If the speed limit is 35 on that one, you got to go on that one.
I
Me
like that.
personally, I would rather just bypass and just access the divine directly. So I do a variety of things. I consider myself a witch. I meditate. I read, books from Buddhist monks, and I'm currently reading the autobiography of a yogi, because I have a friend who does comedic yoga and stuff like that, and he recommended it. And so I consider myself a seeker of that kind of esoteric knowledge. And I don't really super limit myself to any particular practice. And so that's kind of my spiritual path. And my spirituality is not as disciplined as I would like it to be. I'm gonna go ahead and name that, So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not gonna be sitting there acting out like I'm out here really like doing the thing, some days, are better than others. But I do live my life being cognizant that there is more than the corporeal world,
Hmm.
and seeking to make sure that that connection is strengthened, and that I am intentional about acknowledging and understanding that there is more than the corporeal world. As it relates to my polyamory and what I say about how, my polyamory intersects with that is, so it's a deeply spiritual practice for me. And you hear all the time that people say God is love or the divine is love. And so, polyamory causes me to reconcile my relationship to love, which is me reconciling my relationship to the divine.
Hmm.
So, what we believe about love, about relationships, about people, is also what we believe about God, I feel like, And so polyamory opened up this arena to work on love in a way that just was not available to me in monogamy. And it really has caused me to reconcile my relationship to the divine. And it's impacted all of my relationships, not just my my romantic and sexual ones. Like polyamory made me a better parent,
Hmm.
because it was where I had to learn, like, oh, like you kind of like that poem by Khalil Gibran on children, that, my children came from me, but they're not mine. They don't belong to me,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know that I would have gotten that lesson if I wasn't trying to do that work with my partners, and kind of
Yeah.
not seeing them as possessions of mine. And then it kind of said, kind of showed me, well, where are the other areas in your relationship life where you move with entitlement, where you kind of believe this person is, a possession of yours. And as much as we talk about romantic relationships and, needing to, honestly, the relationship where there is the most struggle with boundaries is actually in the parent child. People always talk about romantic, it's the parent child relationship that actually is the one where the boundary work is really, really, really intense,
Yeah.
because these kids, they literally came from my body. Talk about no boundaries. What I mean? They literally were in my body, you know? And so learning how to um accept that the people in my life don't belong to me, it went over to, leading to understand that about my kids. So, for me, polyamory is about learning how to heal my relationship and my thoughts, my feelings about love, which, in turn, has caused me to reflect on my relationship with the divine. And so that's how, they intersect for me.
Yeah. I can relate to that. And like I said previously, or like I always say, just like these intersections that we all live in, like we don't have to choose one or the other because they're more connected than we give credit for. And then when we're trying to fraction ourselves, that's where the struggles happen. Like that's where that polarity, like, oh, I'm a human being, like I'm a divine being, like I'm fucking both, and I'm here to experience life, but to bring this information back to source when I go next this life, after this time. I'm not coming back for a while if I can help it. um and I can definitely relate to like your spirituality impacting your 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 love, your dating life, your relationships in general. And for me, like spirituality is a is like a starting a baseline for people. Like, what is your concept on spirit? Like, what, who are you? That's going to impact how you show up to your everyday life. If you don't feel like you're a part of something bigger, if you don't acknowledge that there is something bigger, a divine source or God or whatever, if you do subscribe to religion, um, that's going to impact the way that we're able to relate, because then I'm going to be either I'm going to sound ridiculous to you, or there's just gonna we're not gonna connect in the same way. Like, I can respect you, I can love you, I can fuck you, but am I really being seen by you? Can you even see the multifaceted, the bigness that I hold? Can you see this energy? Can you even feel what I'm coming to the table with, or is it just like the flesh? You're just stopping at the 3D and you're missing so much more of this iceberg, maybe, if all you're seeing is the tip. So, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
I'm learning that for me, a value for me is to have partners that I can connect to spiritually. You know, that's a big like, and it wasn't that, it wasn't something I was cognizant was a need until recently. And now in my more recent life, I'm like, oh, because it's important for me to have people that I feel like I connect to spiritually, because part of what spirituality does for me is it allows me to really experience life in a very deep, deep, deep way. I experience life very deeply. I'm deeply moved by life. Spirituality is what allows me to be very deeply moved by life. And
Yeah.
I find that when I'm interacting with people for whom, that's not, that's just not their jam, they don't understand that about me. So like I said, am I really being seen? They don't super understand that about me. And
Mm-hmm.
two, like that to me is a point of connection for relationships, because that'll influence how we show up to conflict. That will
Yeah.
influence how we show up to repair. It'll influence how we show up to, like how we are in relationship with each other. And so our understanding of the world and how it works and how it functions, I'm not saying you got to agree with everything that I do. I'm not saying that we have to practice the exact same things, but I do need to feel like you have a connection with spirit that not only are you aware of, but that you actively seek to be in relationship with,
Yeah.
because you'll understand that about me and we'll be able to meet each other in that space.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you, I mean, I know the answer to this. Like, do you put your money where your mouth is? Like, what's your polyamory landscape look like, or your ethical non monogamy?
That's a really hard question to answer for me right now, because so much of that has adjusted and changed for me. And I'm still even answering those questions for myself post divorce.
Yeah.
So, like, I've navigated, 8 years of polyamory and non monogamy with an anchor partner and with a spouse. And now I'm in the space where I'm single, and I'm trying to navigate, what does dating look like for me post divorce, and like, what do I need from relationships now that I have this big relationship space that's open? And then I've changed so much from the person that I was when I started this journey to the person that I am today. So
Yeah.
like, even I feel like there's like this weird, like, kind of space where even though I don't consider myself a relationship anarchist, like some of the ways that I operate kind of function that way. And so I don't super have an answer for that right now, because I'm still fleshing that out for myself. I do have a partner. That partner lives in Los Angeles. It's a long distance relationship. And then I have various connections of a variety of, and they're not really easy to class.
Yeah.
Whereas before I used to really have really have this need for these like clearly defined, like, okay, this person is a friend, this person's this person's that. And now at this juncture in my life, I'm trying to move away from that and trying to be a little bit more like, okay, like, interacting with people from a space of like, okay, do we like each other? Do we know that we want to spend time together? Do we know what we want to do in that time to spend? Like, where do we overlap in that? And like, kind of being at peace with that. I'm not always good at it. Some days are, easier than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, my polyamorous landscape is kind of nebulous right now.
I love that.
And forming still, because of this big transition in my life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful word to describe it. Actually, it's like all the elements are there, and anything can happen. You know, it's the potential to be the grandest star ever, or to just still remain in this like free flowing state. I highly identify with being a relationship anarchist, and I was the type, I never thought I would get married because I felt like too many people are, they function in that hierarchical mindset, and in a lot of ways I say that for my kink and BDSM. We'll talk about that in a second. um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't enjoy participating in vanilla hierarchy. It doesn't resonate with the way that I give importance and equity to my connections and my relationships. So I can feel you on both ends, because I think I trained myself to be more free flowing, because I was that person that's like, I need something tangible. Um, but it was opposite of what my natural inclinations would be. So it's like I want to know mentally what we're doing so that I know how to honor that, or how to move and exist in that space. But I also want to be able to spend time over here. I want to be able to grow over here and do all the things. I left a 10-year relationship that was don't ask, don't tell. And I wanted to give other people that I was dating the opportunity to evolve into other things. And it was very much glass ceiling in that don't ask, don't tell
Mm-hmm.
scenario. So, like, I think that gives a lot of people the comfort or freedom of whatever the hierarchy means for them, so they can feel secure in that partnership. That, like, that 10-year and then unnesting and uncoupling, I was like, not wanting to do that again, where I gave so much energy and effort to one person who was so different than I am. And then now look at me, I'm married now, and like, and I still battle with that. Like, I know for a fact that my wife has different, like, everybody just poly's different, or does their ethical non-monogamy differently. So while where um I can be romantic and I can have partnerships, my wife is more so polysexual, or she wants the all her love and devotion is one source, or goes to one source, and then she wants like casual connections and other things like that that may not blossom, because she doesn't have the capacity to pour into other people. And I don't blame her, as somebody who wants, like, low key, everybody, there's toxic shit about OPP, but like, who doesn't kind of feel like that deep down inside, where like, is it for me only, or like, what is for me only? So the being a paradox and walking through.
No, so I did a podcast once with this person, and we both chuckled about this, and it was so funny because she said, in my perfect, like, fantasy world, I would be non-monogamous and all of my partners would be monogamous to me. And they would come to me and they would be like, you're just so wonderful and so amazing and just so everything that I have no desire for anybody else. But you are such an expansive and just person that how could I keep you from the world? And so, by all means, you have all the connections that you need to have in order to be fulfilled. But I am just so fulfilled with you. And so I'm going to be monogamous to you, but it's totally okay for you to be monogamous to somebody else. And I
Right.
say this all the time. I was like, everybody want to be non-monogamous, but nobody wants their partners to be non-monogamous, right?
Right.
And that's like the challenge. So I deeply resonate with that. I also deeply resonate with the kind of the like being in the different desires around non-monogamy, which we often don't super talk about because we assume that because we're in the same relationship with the person, that when we shift to monogamy, from monogamy to non-monogamy, which I know you and your wife were never monogamous from the beginning, but I often see this a lot, in people transitioning
Mhm.
to non-monogamy, is we assume that our partners want the same kind of non-monogamy that we want, that they have the same capacity for the same kind of non-monogamy that we want, and or that they have to engage in the same kind of non-monogamy, or that we have to engage in the same kind of non-monogamy that our partners want. So in my marriage, when we started, I would largely identify kind of the way your wife does, in that I was very interested, and I've always been this way. I was very, very interested in having a variety of sexual partners because I like sex. I like sex a lot, and I like to have sex with a lot of people. So, so I identified with like having multiple sexual partners, and we started with swinging. And swinging worked for me for a period of time, less so now, but it did at that time. But it was very difficult for my then husband because while I don't know that he would describe himself in this way, but he definitely is a lot more like demisexual, I feel like. And for those of you that don't know what it means, people don't experience sexual attraction unless they have an emotional bond. They feel emotionally safe with the person, they have emotional bond with them, which was very different for me. I could literally sleep with somebody whose name I don't know. Okay, like, and have. Okay. And have, okay, and have. I don't need to necessarily be emotionally connected to you in order to want to have sex. So that's become a lot less so in later years, and my inner hoe is not happy with it at all, but we're going to move on. So he struggled with swinging because it was really hard for him to show up to being sexual with these people that he was not emotionally connected to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started with swinging. Like I said, it worked for me. It didn't work for him. We tried to shift to a different version of polyamory or a different version of non-monogamy that I would say was more just like open relationship. So maybe about 6 months into swinging, we were like, okay, he was very intrigued by the idea of being able to have an actual partner. At that time, my philosophy was that sex is literally something that you do with your body. Your body is a shell. I'm like, animals fuck. You know what I mean? Like, this is just something that we do as like, fucking organisms. It's
Right.
what we do, That to me didn't feel like sharing him. And I say sharing in quotations, and I'll come back to that.
Mm-hmm.
But things like his time, his affection, his regard, his emotions, those things I felt were mine, and I didn't want to share. To me, that's your essence. That was, at that time, that was your essence. That's what makes you you. Your body's just a shell. So it was really hard for me that he wanted to emotionally connect to people because I didn't feel that drive. I didn't really want to connect to emotions. I was very comfortable with us just sleeping with people. And then we had friends, that we would swing with regularly, and people, we had a little swinger community, and we'd go to each other's kids' birthday parties and, shit like that.
Yeah.
But, in swinging, there's this really, like, even if it's not clearly defined, you feel it, and even swinger parties and the way swingers interact, they set things up to ensure that feelings don't happen.
Yeah.
Because in that space, we are not supposed to be dealing in feelings.
No effing.
We can have some fondness,
Right.
like I said, you can have friends, but ain't supposed to be no feelings. Right, no feelings. So that was comfortable for me. I didn't want to share him feelings wise.
Yeah.
Now I understand that he doesn't belong to me, and all of those things, his affection, his love, his time, whatever, those things are his. They belong to him.
Sure.
I was not sharing them with someone else.
Right.
He was sharing them with me.
Yeah.
And he also gets the choice to choose to share them with other people if that's what he wants to do with them. But that took time to reframe that in my mind, because my mind didn't work that way. That wasn't the thought. It took time for me to reframe and to replace that one philosophy with this other philosophy that was more conducive to the lifestyle that we were living. We did swinging for a while. Like I said, we had a brief period where we were like, okay, we're going to open up to dating. I went on a couple of dates. They didn't go all that well. And he went on one date with someone. And when I tell you I lost my shit, I lost my shit. I lost my shit. I did. I lost my shit. I did. He came home. He was talking about it. And I'm not even judging myself, because I was in what I call an activated attachment wound state.
Okay.
I have an anxious attachment style. I was in a very activated attachment wound state. And that relationship, the way that relationship functioned, and this is for both of us, so I'm not making this a dig at him. This is literally, if you talk to him about it, he would say the same thing. The fundamental needs that we had in relationships in order to feel fulfilled and satiated the other person did not have.
Mm.
Not for lack of trying, because we were together for 17 years. There was a lot of trying in that 17 years.
Yeah.
But how he showed up to me was not able, it was very challenging. It was really hard for me to feel secure in that relationship. And the only reason why I know that's the case is because I have a relationship now that I feel so secure in. I never doubt for a second in my relationship with Marquise that he loves me, that he desires me, that he likes me, that he wants to be in relationship with me, that he's, you know, excited and passionate and you know and engaged and present in our relationship. I literally, we've been together for 4 years. I don't think I've ever had a real serious moment that wasn't like 2 or 3 minutes where I felt insecure in that relationship. And so that's how I know, that's how I can look back on that relationship and say that relationship didn't have a lot of that, because I have the experience now of feeling so secure in a relationship that I know when I don't, you know?
Yeah.
And so him going on that date flared all that shit up, you know? And so he's coming home. He's talking to me about the date. I'm in this activated attachment wound state, and because this was all new, I didn't have any of the tools that I have now. Now I got a whole armory of tools, you know, that I developed over time. A whole arsenal. My bag is, you know, my bag is full. Okay, I got a full clip. I got a full clip.
Yeah.
But and even then, like, and you know, to not to, you know, go down a different journey, but like even then, you encounter so many new situations in non-monogamy that sometimes that full clip, that bullet still ain't hitting the target for that new situation. You have to be in a constant state of knowing that you're going to be continuously developing tools. You're going to be replacing tools. It's like this tool worked 2 years ago, it don't work now. So you have to be continually doing it. But at that time, I didn't have no tools. Okay, tool bag empty. So he comes home. He's talking about the date. I'm going through my feelings about it. And I think I said something to him. I said, like, there was a part of me that was, you know, kind of thinking that you would go on this date and you probably wouldn't like that person all that much or whatever, da da da. And he said, nah, she was cute.
Isn't that always the thing? Like in the back of our mind, we're just ready for them to come back. Like that was some bullshit. Even though we want our partners to have good, you know, we want for them to be happy. It's still just like I'm a
At
reserve
that time,
1%.
yeah, at that time, it's not that I wanted him to have a bad time. I think maybe I was like projecting the experience that I was having onto his experience. Also, and I actually talk about this a lot. So my husband was an introvert, an extreme introvert at that. Didn't like a lot of people, and I've talked about this a bunch, and I don't know that I've ever heard anybody really speak about this, but there's a certain speciality that you feel when someone like that chooses you,
Mm-hmm.
because you know they don't like a lot of people, and so you feel almost an extra specialness
Mm-hmm.
around I'm a person that they like and they connect to, because this person is an introvert, they don't like people, they don't really interact with people, but they connected to me, they wanted to be with me, they wanted a relationship with me.
Yeah.
So when, you know, he came back, I guess I kind of just expected, you know, like I said, I was projecting my experience onto him, and I kind of expected, based on knowing who he was, that it probably just wouldn't go anywhere. And I didn't really want that, but I was just sharing my thoughts, you know? And not all thoughts that come forward or feelings that come forward are actually reflective of what our centered self wants.
Right. Our highest self
Our
doesn't.
highest self, our integrity self, you know?
Yeah.
And so I said that to him, and he was like, nah, no, she was cute. I liked it. Man, when I tell you I lost my, it fell apart. Right? I was, fell apart.
Oh, baby.
So, and the funny thing about that story is I think she wanted to interact with me just to make sure that everything was on up and up. And she and I ended up becoming friends and hanging out. We would hang out, we'd get together, go out, you know, and he, like, their connection just didn't, you know, it just didn't materialize. And that's another thing that's really funny that I often tell people in non-monogamy that I had to learn is, like, you know, Kevin would come home, that was my husband's name, and he'd say something like, hey, I'm going on a date or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I would expend so much energy just having all this stuff about it, you know? And then 2 weeks later, the connection would fizzle. And it would be like all that energy was gone, you know?
Yeah.
So it's comedic for me to think about like all of the stuff that I went through about him going on this date, and then it turning out that she and I became friends and we would kick it and hang out, whatever, blah blah blah. And they didn't really, nothing really, came of them and the two of them. And so that was kind of like our foray into a different version of non-monogamy than the one that we had originally been practicing, but it was so volatile that we tabled it and we were like, yeah, no, this is probably not the time to do it. And then we came back to it about another 6 months later because I wanted the experience of being able to have like emotionally connected relationships to women.
Mm-hmm.
And in the framework that we were operating in, that wasn't possible. So I wanted a girlfriend, and at that point, I had just slept with women. I had sex with women, but I had never had the experience of having a relationship with one and being able to develop an emotional bond. And I wanted that experience. And so we came back to it because we wanted to be able to have space for that experience. I also, it had been some time had passed, I developed a little bit. And we got into non-monogamy. So normally, couples where it's a heterosexual or a heterosexual appearing, couple where you have a, cishet man and, a cishet bisexual woman, usually they get into non-monogamy looking for a triad, looking for a three-person dynamic.
Whole unicorn.
For us, that was not the case. Yeah, for us, that was not the case because he and I had such different taste in women that I was like, there is no way that we're going to find someone that we both like. This is just not possible. And so when we got into it with the understanding that we were going to date separately. He was going to meet somebody. He was going to do his own, looking for somebody. I was going to do my own looking for somebody, and never the twain shall meet. And randomly, we went to a swinger party and we met the partner that we were with for 2 years that ushered us into now we're in polyamory, Yeah. And then once, that relationship ended, we just continued on, with being polyamorous and non-monogamous and, seeking, relationships as we saw fit. And a lot of growth happened, in that process.
Yeah. Is that the relationship that was portrayed in the documentary that you were all involved in?
Yes. That's the relationship that's the subject of the documentary.
Such like public, like spectacle of your love life. And then also
it's challenging.
Like having a very public breakup as well. I can imagine.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. That one was rough. It was really rough. You feel so much pressure to figure out how to make things work. You feel so much so I'm typically a person who tries my best to live my life in such a way to where I care as minimally as I possibly can about people's feelings and their thoughts about my life.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I do a relatively good job. Polyamory and non-monogamy opened up this whole new arena of me actually kind of caring about the opinions of, the people that were surveying what it was that I was doing. And it was important for me to be open about it for a variety of reasons. Number one, I live my life out loud and I always have, so I've always been that way. Mm-hmm. And then number two, so much of the face of polyamory, the public face of polyamory at that time was very white. And so there just weren't a lot of Black people that were like, hey, I'm living this way. This is how I'm living. And then the examples that I did see were usually, FMF triads, and all of that stuff. If you did see it in the Black community at all, which it really just was not that, at that time, like I said, this was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. At that time, there really wasn't a lot of people, a lot of Black people, a lot of, that were really being honest about it. And so that also became important to me of being someone that's nah, I'm living this way and I'm a Black person, I'm queer, I'm a woman. And kind of being, being someone that was just very, to me, it wasn't really about wanting to have my relationships on display necessarily, even though that is eventually what ended up happening. To me, it was in conjunction with how I normally lived anyways. I'm a very out loud person. But, when you have, that you have, there's a statement and it's a scientific statement. I never remember the quote. I really should look it up because it's literally come up so many times recently for me. Is observation changes the results.
Yeah.
of anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a scientific term, you know, since they talk
The
about science, you know, when
observation
you bring in
theory.
observation,
Yeah.
right. So knowing that you're being watched and knowing that people are perceiving it does change things. And so even now, there's a lot of that happens for me, you know, and kind of like navigating that dance of I'm very public about my life. And so I'm very public about my relationships, but I also can be in relationships with people that are a lot more private than me. That, you know, how do I talk about these things while also, you know, being considerate to my partners and like, you know, because I'm talking about their stuff too. And in my relationship with my husband, I wasn't very good about it. He's an extremely private person. We just were not, you know, a fit. Even though we lasted for 17 years, we did not have a bad marriage. We have a good relationship today. He literally just sent me a text. Okay. We have a good relationship today.
Yeah.
So, but he was a very private person. And a lot of my talking about my relationship, you know, meant that other people were in his business even when he wasn't necessarily, you know, when that wasn't something that he necessarily signed up for.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as good at them because it wasn't even that I, you know, didn't want to be. I just didn't know that this was a thing that you should be cognizant of. I was not as good as like getting consent, like clearing with him, like, hey, I'd like to talk about this thing. Are you okay with that? Like, you know, I wasn't really good about that. And so, like, he went through a lot of people having insight into his relationship and into his private life in a way that was deeply uncomfortable for him because he's an extremely private person.
Yeah.
So it is challenging towing that line between, you know, having this very public, you know, like, you know, lens on this area of my life that not only, you know, encompasses me, it encompasses anybody that I'm involved with, and then also is very personal. It
Mm-hmm.
is very personal. So it is challenging. It is.
I bet. So, would you consider yourself kinky? And if so, what are the ways that or if any, does your kink and polyamory intersect, or do you keep those things separately? You know.
So my kink development is evolving also. There was a joke amongst my friends for a very long time that I was vanilla with sprinkles because I would be like, I'm vanilla, I'm vanilla, I'm vanilla. And some of that came from me because you know polyamory. I always say that polyamory and kink, like they're bedfellows, you know. So you know you can't be in polyamory without getting some interaction with kink spaces and kink people and all that stuff. They're you know they're very connected. So I would consider myself like kink adjacent because I knew a lot about kink, you know, because I had all these friends that were into it and all these poly communities. I'd been to kink events and whatever. But outside of the occasional, I might put a blindfold in the bedroom. We had a little, you know, harness underneath the mattress where you could do some restraint. I might ask him to smack my ass or, you know, choke me a little bit. You know, that was kind of it. And what I saw in the kink community was how dogmatic people can be about it and how like intense people could be about it. And I was like, that is not me at all, you know? So I didn't really feel like, you know, the kink community was for me because I have a very free flowing kind of, you know, relationship to it. You know, if I see situations that I want to engage in, I do. If I don't, I don't. If I don't have a strong kink presence in my life, I'm at peace, like I'm at ease. You know, I won't seek it. You know, it usually it kind of appears in my life when it appears, and it doesn't when it doesn't, and I'm at peace with it either way. So it's really hard for me to see myself as kinky. Another reason that I actually highlighted recently that I had a hard time seeing myself as kinky is because to me, and maybe that's just my definition of kink is you know what they classify as kinky is maybe things that are deviant, you know, from the like you know what's conventional.
Yeah.
And I never saw anything that I did as deviant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, there's a like to me there. I don't want to say there wouldn't be a need for kink because I think kink is very important and valid for people. But if we just let people be who the fuck they are, like this shit wouldn't seem stand weird. It'd be like, okay, this is so and so gets turned on by balloons. Cool. This is so and so gets turned on by wearing a diaper and acting like a baby. Cool. Like, you know what I mean? So like that to me was very strange because I'm like, why do we need to create this whole separate category for people just doing what they want to do with
Yeah.
other adults that want to do the shit with them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like that was strange for me because I was like, I didn't feel like I needed a separate space for that because I'm like, this is the shit I like to do.
Right.
So like that made it challenging for me to like identify as kinky. So, but recently So I have my partner. My partner's super kinky. The one that lives in Los Angeles, and I've been with for 4 years. And so we started kind of exploring that, and and really it was around rope because he likes rope, and I love rope. I'm definitely into shibari. I like being a rope bunny. And so we were kind of sort of, exploring that, and then the pandemic hit,
Mm-hmm.
and so nobody could do anything with anybody. And then I get my divorce. And this is so funny. It's such a funny story because, he wasn't really kinky either. But then he started dating some people that were kinky. And so he started kind of trying to see if there was something in it for him. And I tell this story, I'll never forget it. One day it was Thanksgiving. I didn't want to celebrate the colonizers' holiday. And so I get this plan that me and him and the kids and my partner at the time, I had another partner at the time, and we were going to go away on like a little family getaway. We went to a powwow, and and then we went to Joshua Tree where we went camping in Joshua Tree, and so that was what we did, for Thanksgiving.
I love.
So we're at the campsite. I literally have my other partner on the damn, family vacation with me, okay, with us, sleeping in a tent with him, okay? So on the vacation, my husband comes to me and he tells me that he signed up to go to a spanking class and that he's going to be going to this spanking class. Divine. When I tell you I went from spanking class to we're divorced, okay, in like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like internally having a meltdown because I'm like, he's going to become kinky and he's going to, connect with his other kinky partners, and his relationship with me is going to become boring and he's not going to want to be with me anymore. But I mean, it was intense, And
Yeah.
I call that my bullet brain, where my brain just goes off in a shot. And like, we go from him going to a spanking class to like now, we're at the fucking, divorce court, trying to navigate custody, right? Which is ironic because now we're actually divorced today, and it happened years later after that. It's very ironic. It had nothing to do with kink. Okay,
Right,
so
right.
nothing to do with kink. But so it's funny for me to like have that in my like history, and
Yeah.
then we get divorced. I come out here, and another thing too is my non-monogamy journey started in San Diego, which is a very, very white community.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these alternative lifestyle communities, the polyamorous community, the kink community, et cetera, was white. And I've been to kink events, I've gone to kink things or whatever. I've had white partners in the past, but I just never felt a drive to really want to engage in it until I moved out here where I live now in Jersey City. And I got the opportunity to be in these spaces in all Black environments. So now I'm able to go to all Black sex parties. I'm able to go to all Black kink parties. And when I started doing that, I was like,
Hits different.
oh, it hits different. It hits different. And I'm actually feeling a lot more like I want to engage, in these different things. And then I was able to kind of get a lot more like of a picture of the vastness, of kink, because it's so vast.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's a part of it. And then because of that, getting those examples of the different things that were available, some things would pop up and I thought, I think I'd be into that. I think I'd be into that. Oh, I actually kind of like that. Or, I'd be at a party and I'd see something and I'd try it and I'd be like, yo, I'm kind of feeling that.
My new
And so
job.
then, right, yeah. And so then I was like, okay, Vita, I think it's now time for you to actually like kind of say you are actually kinky.
Yeah.
So that was a very long, long way to say, yes, I do identify as a kinky person. I'm definitely a rope bunny. I am submissive, and even that's been a challenge. That's a new thing, which I'll go into in a minute. But I'm definitely submissive. I like impact, like I said, rope. Wax is something that I enjoy. I recently had an experience with electric play that I actually really enjoyed because my first initial like experience with electric play, I was at a munch. Somebody had a violent wand. They were like, "Yo, you want to try it?" They zapped my forearm, and I was like, "Hell no." And I was like, nope, to electric play. But I recently like reopened up to that, and was, interacting with someone. They had a wand. They were like, "Yo, you want to try it?" I was like, "Cool." I really enjoyed it. So now I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of into that. I like dollification, even though I've never gotten an opportunity to try it. But dollification, I like the idea of being objectified.
Yeah.
So that's a thing, and being an object of beauty for a person. So like that's kind of a thing for me. Like some of like I like some objectification.
Yeah.
And I'm still like getting my sea legs as it relates to like where I'm at. And so when I was talking about being submissive, um, that's been pretty standard and pretty solid for me. Even when in the rare instances that I do, top, it's usually like because it's a sensation that someone wants. And so even to me, it doesn't feel like topping. It still feels like submitting.
Yeah.
I'm giving this person a sensation that they enjoy. And I like giving pleasure. So if something is pleasurable to a person, if you tell me it's pleasurable, I'll give it to you. Now I can't do intense pain. I can't really do severe pain. Like that's something I can't do. So if somebody needed that, I'd be like, you have to go somewhere else for that because I can't do that. But like, I even in that space, it still doesn't feel like topping to me. It feels like more I'm providing somebody a service by giving them a sensation that they enjoy, and I like giving pleasure.
Yeah.
So, but because I'm 6'1" and I'm Black and I have a commanding presence, often when people engage me with kink in their heart, it's because they want dominance. And because I'm assertive and in my regular life, I'm, pretty, whatever, people assume that, well, you have to be dominant. And so, in learning that, no, I'm really submissive. I really, really am. Like my submission is very like devotion. Like I'm like, I really just want, like, I'm like, you tell me to jump, I'll tell you, ha ha, like that really, when I feel that way for a person, like it's very, 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 very intense, very intense. So, but I was feeling a lot of struggle around like accepting this about myself because number one, it made me feel like I was disappointing people. And
Mm.
that when people were approaching me for dominance and wanting dominance, and that's literally just not who I am, it caused me to feel like these people that normally had this estimation or regard for me, that it would dampen their regard or it would lessen it. And
Mhm.
that was something to deal with around like, this is authentically who I am. But it became this area of insecurity around who I genuinely am and how that, how people react to that. And then there was this other piece about it where I felt like being submissive and, because I identify as a woman, like it felt like being basic because so much of patriarchy tells us as women we're supposed to be submissive.
Mhm.
And so there was a challenge for me in that because I'm like, one of the questions I love to ask people is, in what way are you a stereotype? I ask people that question all the time because it's interesting to find out what ways people are stereotypes. And so when you know, being a woman and being submissive felt like I was like, siding with the patriarchy. And so that was really hard to accept about myself. And I'm still actually moving through that space of acceptance, but I'm definitely sub. Like, even when I take those kink tests or whatever, it like literally it'll be like 98% sub, like 2% down. Like it's so much. It's so much.
Yeah.
And even that is something that I'm learning about myself. Like, am I a sub in a sense to where like in certain, situations, that's how I want to be submissive, but do I ever want to be in an actual dynamic, to where like, someone is in some kind of, like we're in some kind of like formal agreement that this person is over me in a way, like I'm navigating through whether or not that serves my needs, and if so, what do I need in order to be able to give that to a person? Do I even want to give that to a person?
Mhm.
So it's been an interesting journey for sure, but I do identify as kinky, yes. Now. Now.
And thanks for sharing. I think as Black people, also, we kind of reject the notion of being submissive because of the conditioning. Well, one, society looks at submission as weakness, but then also like our ancestors were forced into submission, and so we don't want no parts. Like a lot of times, especially like you said, the patriarchy, all the things that tell us this is wrong, but it's really like one of the most powerful acts. And I'm separating submission from bottoming because just physical sensation and things like that. Anybody can lay down. I'm a pleasure bottom. I'm not submissive by like psychologically, but people tend to look at this, and it's all toxic masculinity, really, like just regurgitating itself because we think that submission or receiving, even bottoming, like people, male bodies, male bodies being submissive it's like this somehow this foreign concept, especially black male bodies, is we stereotype other people and who they should be. So I can resonate. I have a lot of people who look at me, they might know all the things, but they still want to try me. Like they still want to like give to me, but also like control me. And I'm a pleasure about them, like I said, but also that's only in a safe environment that I have deemed emotionally safe. And the way I regard submission is like I I value submission is so highly attractive because it takes that self-awareness to be able to observe a safe space, lay your burdens down, allow somebody to guide you, direct, navigate, whatever you want to call it. Um, so I think the more you do it, the more comfortable it'll feel because you're redefining what that means and like fuck what other people think, like fuck letting them down. I think the real letdown and disservice would be for you to assume this role that other people want to put you in. Um, and like
Right.
you
And I
said,
know enough about that to know that that's not the thing. If I were to show up trying to do this, just to, appease somebody's estimation of me, or to meet, what, how they perceived me, that would be doing a disservice to me. It would also be doing a disservice to that person. And I've had a couple of instances where, like, I remember one time, I'll never forget it. This guy reached out to me. He wanted to pay me to watch me smoke a cigar for 30 minutes. And I
mhm.
was like, okay, we could do that. I like smoke. But he wanted dominance. And I was just like, I can't give you that. Like, I literally was just like, I don't even know what to do. Like, it feels silly to me. Now, I can co-top, and I've done that before. But even that to me is I'm topping in service to somebody else.
Mhm.
So that person is the lead top, and I'm taking my directive from them, and I'm like showing up and, creating this experience for this person that's bottoming or the sub. But like, I still don't see that as like I'm in control because I'm very much taking my lead from the person that's the lead top.
Yeah.
But I would be doing a disservice to the other person. I'd also be doing a disservice to myself. So I have enough, wisdom to know that if people get disappointed, like they just gonna have to get disappointed and I just gonna have to go lick my wounds about that shit. Like, if it really bothers me, but like, the answer is not for me to assume a role that is not authentic to who I am because it will absolutely be, it
It's
will
not shit.
absolutely become apparent, that it's like this person is not the person supposed to be doing this shit.
Mhm.
And while I do think that there is merit to exploring our relationships with both sides of the slash, I think everybody can get benefit from that.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very, very leery, and I know that you probably experience this a lot of dealing with, and mostly I deal with this with cis het men generally. I'm a dom, and I'm like, okay, but like, and if you're like, oh, like, would you be open to experiencing? I love when I meet doms that they do not provide any experience that they have not experienced on themselves.
Mhm.
They allow themselves to experience their implements. They allow themselves so that they know what it feels like. When I meet people and they're like, oh, I never put myself in that position or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. We
Yeah.
good, and it's not because I don't feel like people can kind of know, like I know very much so that I'm submissive. I know that about myself, but also I do think that there's merit in being willing to explore our relationship with both, even if my exploration with dominance gives me more understanding about my submission,
Mhm.
or someone's exploration with submission gives them more understanding about their dominance.
Right.
So I do believe that there is like there'll be some point along my journey where the universe will be like, okay, this is your space to work with and to meet your relationship to dominance, and
Yeah.
how that functions for you. Because to me also learning how so the human experience is a dual one. It's polarity, and so learning how to you know know ourselves in the poles is very, very crucial, because I can't be submissive in every single solitary circumstance of my life. Sometimes I have, oh, I keep calling. So, but anyways, so like there's not every situation in life, I'm not gonna be able to show up to it and be submissive. Some situations are gonna require dominance.
Right.
And so I need to have an understanding of how that functions for me so that when I need to access it, it's available, and I'm comfortable in it. So I do believe that there will be some period, throughout my journey where, dominance will, be something that I face. But it just it comes up so rarely that I want to do it, that I'm, comfortable with being able to say, no, I'm just largely a submissive person. That is how I am.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, know thyself, and know what feels good to you so that you can just embrace that. When dominants are resistant to bottoming it or receiving pleasure, it doesn't even like no matter how it is that they want to call it. I try not to judge. I reserve judgment, but I do find myself observing what appears to me as just someone who is still working through whatever conditioning they have around pleasure and around receiving. It can be toxic as fuck to hear people. I was at a high protocol dinner and this white man was across from me, and he was saying that we had both experienced rope by the same rope top. And I said, he showed me pictures or something, or he said something about, oh, I can't wait to let so and so tie me up again. And I said, oh, I've bottomed for Rod. I've bottomed for this person. And he was like, I don't consider that bottoming. And I'm like, well, okay, well, what do you consider it? Like that person is a top and a dominant, and they did something to you, and you received this rope. So what they had, like he had some like cis het white explanation about why it was not bottoming, and I'm like, well, what about if your woman is riding you? Like you're literally on the bottom. Like anything that I said that was like a counter or try to get him to expand his thinking or to uh empower these acts, like even if it's somebody who's topping you from you're topping from the bottom or directing you're submissive, um it's still just like a psychological, it's a dissonance with like the way that we view and like what value or respect do you have for submissives and bottoms if when you put yourself in there it's a cringe thing. I'm like, what respect
Right.
do you really have or can you really hold? So for
That's
me,
literally what I was going to say is that if someone has, not to cut you off, but if someone has such a sharp reaction to the suggestion that they are being submissive in any way or that they're bottoming in any way, I would seriously question how much respect and appreciation they have for submission and bottoming if it's literally an offense
yeah.
for someone to apply that to you.
Right. Like not me. All right, I get that. And I may have worked my way through that. I don't know if I ever had such resistance to it. And when it comes to kink, I know I'm not submissive, but I like experiencing pleasure. And the more that I tapped into my pleasure activism and just my expression, the more likely that I was to allow people to give to me, especially when I'm bringing people to these like cathartic experiences and they're having like expanded consciousness and all these things from the pleasure or topping or whatever, beating, whatever I'm doing to them. And I'm like, I want some? Like, can I float? Like, can you, can I
Now,
not
I'd
float?
like to ask you a question about that actually, because I'm
Sure.
curious. Can I ask
Yeah.
you a question? I know you interviewing me, okay,
No,
but I'm gonna
no.
ask you a question. Or you a
Deep.
question, okay? But as someone who does not have this experience, because I don't do this, do you not have those transcendent like experiences when you're topping, like how you're saying, you're submissive, you're beating them, whatever you're doing, and they're going into these states and they're having these experiences. Is that not accessible for you when you're in that top space?
It is a different form.
Mm,
Top space is a thing. Dom space is a thing. It can hold the same like expansive nature, and it can be very much like trance like and just altered consciousness is happening, but there's still a level of responsibility that I have to
yeah.
level, like I have to keep one foot in this realm, to one make sure that I'm still uh caring for the body that's in my care, that I'm not just like losing my shit and leaving them, that we're both, there's always like one toe in, one toe out, kind of thing. I can't fully allow myself to completely
Release.
out. Yeah. And there's different types of plays that take me there quicker. Like I really enjoy primal play and being able to get into my like primordial energy and just I call it like going black, where I can like just be and not have to worry about that. But um it's very rare that I will even allow myself to go but so far. And so this we call it, bottoming is a surrender, submission is a surrender. And a lot of people that I dominate, they are alphas in their life. They are the CEOs, the managers, and the dominants also, who want to lay their burdens down and want to like not have the responsibility of thinking or being the person who's making sure we're all safe here. So yes and no, um, because like I said, it's that level of responsibility that can never fully. I can't tap out completely.
Yeah, and
But
that makes sense because you need to make sure the person is safe. You need to make sure the scene stays safe, and they're really coming to you so they can do that, not to say check out because I feel like that sounds like lack of presence, but that they can turn that off because they're giving that to you, that this person is going to, cover, the
mhm,
ways in which I'm not on because I'm trying to get fully immersed and present in this experience. So that does make sense to me. That's like, you experience the euphoria of engaging in the activity and there's all of that connection to that, but you still have to kind of stay on earth, because
right.
there's literal like earthly physiological things that are happening and you need to be in control of those things.
'Cause I would just like get into the sensations of it, and now we're just both laying here or standing here or whatever. You're like, hello, like, are you coming back to this ass or whatever's going on? So yeah, but I do, when I do trance out, I'm comfortable enough in it that I can get into my headspace. I'm never holding back that. Like I think there's a disservice to be done too by holding back and not allowing yourself to connect energetically. So I do get as deep as I can, but I'm also, much more aware too of the dangers of going completely
Yeah.
topside, if you will. So I know you work with coach or for couples for coaching. Where can people find you if I wanted to connect with you in that way? Where should we direct people to seek you out?
The best place honestly to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram is Lavita Loca 34. I also have a Facebook page, Lavita Loca Sawyers. That's honestly the two places to find me. I don't have a website. Like, I call myself a reluctant content creator. So like all of this stuff around like, I'm like, I just happen to find myself in this space. People resonate with what I say, but like, I didn't go into this going, I'm going to try to get thousands of followers and blah, 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 blah. And this is, I really didn't. And so I can sometimes drag my feet to like, really doing the thing, because I'm like, I feel, honestly, I feel like I'm just a regular human being who really likes to talk about this, and a lot of my talking was really just going, can I get a witness, and it just so happened that I ended up garnering quite a few witnesses, but
Right.
it wasn't because I really was trying to set out to be this person. But now here we are. So like I said, so Instagram Lavita Loca 34, and then Facebook Lavita Loca Stories is mostly where you can kind of reach me. You can
And that's
find me there.
VITA, not VIDA. So,
Yes, yeah, Lavita
mhm.
Loca 34.
And I think that's really speaks to like why your content is so real, because it's fucking real. This isn't you like seeking to like you said, you weren't stepping into this arena to be something, you were just sharing. And so I think that
Hmm.
the authenticity definitely reads, and people can feel your humanness. And it's also like me too, because that the things you share, they're not, oh, my polyamory is perfect and I'm gracefully floating through these. You're really sharing challenges that the everyday Joe Schmo is going to go through, who Jane Doe is going to resonate with, and the inclusivity of it to recognize those who may struggle, or like the solutions that you provide for people with anxious fucking attachment styles, or for, just people who may not, this wasn't their idea in the first place and they're just kind of along for the ride. you really have that a way of touching people at the heart. Like, okay, it's not just me who is struggling with the everyday thing. Because for some reason, people think like um, non-monogamous people are supposed to be more evolved. Like, yeah, I might have the capacity to love, but that also means the capacity to hate, be jealous, have insecurities, all these things multiplied by the number of fucking partners that I may have. And so, like, the world is definitely a better place because of your presence in that realm. But also, when we hear about polyamory, it's very little brown and black bodies that are being represented, like you said, and like the coaches and the people who are here to share the struggles, they don't look like us. They don't really,
Hmm.
they have these perfectly decolonized marriages, and they're whatever was so graceful for them, or that's what they want us to at least believe on the social. So thank you for existing in your authenticity, your realness. Like, I'm like grateful that I know you, and I'm humbled to be able to have access to this amazing mind of yours. I look forward to reading this book, and I'm going to just open the book and see where it leads me, that first page. But yeah,
You'll have
I,
to tell me which
yeah,
day you open to. I want to know. I want to know which day you open to. So please make sure you let me know when that happens.
I will. I'll send a